Greetings sailors and welcome back to a viewer replay, and this is actually a name you might remember from an Iggia game not all that long ago. But this time round Abdullah the Tanker, for it is he, is in the Georgia, which is in some ways the follow-on to the Massachusetts. It's not really that similar apart from the secondaries of course, and the trick with these secondaries on the Massachusetts this and I think the Ohio as well is that they do not need manual secondaries in order to achieve really good accuracy. They have a kind of natural boost, and in some ways they've basically superseded any hope the Germans had sort of being kings of that role, because although these guns tend to be smaller caliber, they're basically 127 mils, and the Germans tend to be a mix of what, 105s and 128s. And do they get some 152s as well? I'm not actually sure. Or 150s rather. It wouldn't be 152, would it, for the German calibers? But no, I'm sure they do get some 150 mils as well. Just the fact that you don't have to spend captain points on making your secondaries actually able to hit stuff is of huge benefit. So he's starting off with a fairly cautious approach. I mean, he's basically keeping his distance for the time being. We know there is a destroyer in the sea cap, and he's maybe a bit hesitant about, well, he doesn't want to push in obviously, but a bit hesitant about pushing past that gap, or maybe he just wants to figure out what's there first and keep his options open in terms of actually being able to shoot at stuff. Now the Kiev, who has already taken some damage, does actually push in and spot what destroyer they have, which is something. I can read what that is on the preview screen. That's a lie, I really can't. It'll be totally obvious when I look back later on, but yeah, for now I am struggling to read what that is. A lightning, there we go. And they are actually not that far off being in secondary range, but sadly not quite close enough. They do take a bit of damage though, and he's also managed to get some decent damage with his spotter also. But sadly for the Kiev, yeah, they absolutely were never going to outspot them, and with the health disadvantage going into that fight, it's not gone so well. But this flank is almost, I don't know, this is more of a holding action than anything else right now, because they have taken the B cap, and it looks like they're reasonably equally matched on that other side of the map. So if you can just, I don't know, help keep them contained, maybe do some damage, get some kills, that ought to help them out quite a lot. And there's clearly one of the other enemy team's destroyers here as well. It's a 4-destroyer game, which can be a bit spicy when you're in a battleship in terms of the number of torpedoes flying around, especially if there's no carrier spotting available. At that point you're just reliant on maybe radar. Also, you might be able to hear cats meowing in the background. Well, cats. A cat. Hello, Sam. I don't know what he's meowing about, but clearly something's not to his satisfaction. So he and this de Grosser, and what I was saying about German ships earlier, you know, they're both in secondary range of each other, but if the de Grosser has manual secondaries, you know, they've had to spend 4 captain points to get that, whereas Abdullah has just the natural benefit of fast firing accurate secondaries without having to spend any captain points on it at all, apart from AFT. You need AFT if you're going to get the best range, of course, but that's a lot less of a point spend than AFT and manual secondaries. And at that point you're then left deciding, do you also want Concealment Expert, which doesn't give you a lot of points to play with for the lower skills, the lower point skills. So yeah, it's so much nicer with the American secondary spec ships, because you can then put more points into survivability, which is still fairly important. For the German battleships, you have to sacrifice quite a lot to get those secondaries to actually work to their full potential. So trying to finish off this Donskoy, not getting terrifically lucky shots. They've also gotten the Charlie cap, which is quite handy. That's given them maybe, well, definitely give them an edge in terms of digging points, but maybe also gives them more of a breathing space. But that destroyer that was here has managed to clock him one in the nose, unfortunately. And the Jean Bar is also now heavily pushing, but I'm not entirely sure what their plan is because they're low health and just sailing so broadside right now. And it really didn't take a lot to finish them off. So that's his second kill. Now there's just the De Grosser, and he is taking some damage at this point, but he's still got 4 heals left. This is almost just dueling secondaries at this stage. And I do wonder if the De Grosser was maybe thinking, okay, I'm kind of locked into this awkward position. Don't want to give broadside like the Jean Bart, so maybe he was thinking of going for the ram. But Georgia's fast, even without the speed boost. Georgia is a fast ship, and well, that helped out just there when it turns out there's even more torpedoes coming in. So with that, a couple of hits there and the fire ticking away, that is the De Grosser out of action. And that just leaves whatever destroyer is on that flank to deal with, who can almost certainly outspot the Le Terrible, because that has fairly bearable surface concealment, even if it does in fact go for max concealment. And yeah, as it turns out, it's an Erland, although they are in range of the secondaries, and as there's nothing else immediately nearby, Abdullah actually starts to bring his guns around, and maybe he's going to try and help out, because otherwise the Le Terrible isn't in a great position. It does have really good burst damage, potentially, but it can be not that difficult, especially end on to try and dodge those. So his loaded HE actually manages to get the kill and just saves that Le Terrible from being sunk as well. So we're skipping ahead slightly, only about 40 seconds or so, and that's his 4th kill, by the way, so 1 more and a Kraken. They do seem to have things rather firmly in hand at this stage. The enemy team has not quite half the points, but not far off. They do. They are once again flipping Bravo, and Abdullah is now heading into Delta. And there's another destroyer, this time the Ognavoy, who does have rather more potent torpedoes than the Erland did. And again, well within secondaries, so I think it's... Is it possibly the other Georgia that spotted him? He's maybe trying to rush this Georgia. It's not entirely clear. But yeah, whatever it is he's doing, it seems like a rather desperate move. And so between the secondaries of 2 Georgias and running into an island, he's on fire, and he does get his torps out, but the other Georgia actually kills him with his main battery. He does get, however, his revenge. I'm not entirely sure that was a good move, but the enemy team does seem to be getting maybe a little desperate out of this stage. They never really fully took control of the other flank, and although there was a fair bit of attrition on this side of the map, Abdullah is quite healthy still. So no Kraken there, but there are still enemy ships left to take pot shots at, including another Fat Freddy, who takes a very nasty hit from these 18-inch guns. And if we can get a bit closer, I mean, he's not that far off getting his secondaries to work. And the Hipper isn't even that far away either at this stage, especially as he has the speed boost going. However, the eagle-eyed among you might have noticed that the cap is actually blocked, so there's something even closer still, which turns out to be that surviving destroyer, the Lightning, and any second now, there we go. There's his first secondary kill. Although, in theory, the other De Grosser that he killed was kind of a secondary kill in that it was fires set by secondaries. So, definitely dodges the Lightning's torps. And can he get yet another kill? Yes, he can. Not quite close enough to make it a double kill. And you might have noticed none of this is actually flashed up in the top right-hand corner. It is showing in the chat messages, but yeah, it's a current replay bug that the awards do not show up as icons. They only show up in the chat messages. So approaching 150k damage, which is pretty respectable. You know, there are certainly games out there and replays out there I've had and seen much higher damage for a tier 9 game, but they tend to be fairly exceptional. So this is definitely respectable. But yeah, he's been maybe getting a couple of kill secures as well, especially with the aid of the secondaries, but I don't think we can discount his main batteries. So there we go. Kill number 7. He's killed basically more than half the enemy team at this stage. And, well, if you could get this Ognivoy, that would be the icing on the cake, but sadly an 8th kill is denied. I still think, by the way, there should be, and I know other CCs have said this as well, there should be extra awards for kills over 5. 8 especially, it seems like a good threshold, and for goodness sake, if you manage to get 10 kills in a game, that absolutely should have some reward to it, but never mind, it is not the case. You only get the Kraken, sadly. So overall, a pretty good game, and it shows why the Georgia is actually quite a fun ship, because although you don't have that many guns, they do hit hard, and of course you've got those secondaries to work with. Now, I want to end this by essentially asking for more replays, because I've noticed an absolute dearth of replays being sent in recently for viewer submissions, also kind of Patreon submissions as well. But I'm going to, you know, poke my patrons separately. I do have my, especially when it comes to Patreon replays, I have a big backlog of replays that I could use, but of course now can't. So yeah, if you've been enjoying my channel and you have replays to send in, well, you can find out how to do so in the video description. So that about finishes this video off. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and if you did, you can do all the usual things down underneath it. And of course, as always, stay tuned for more.